The morning sun hadn't quite broken through the clouds when Maya Rodriguez's phone buzzed insistently on her nightstand. She fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Her sister Sophia's name flashed with an incoming call. "Sophia, it's 5:30 in the morning." "What's wrong?" "Maya, I need the biggest favor." Sophia's voice was strained, congested. "I'm sick." "Really sick? I've been up all night with a fever and I can barely stand. But I have a shift at the Ashford estate today, and if I don't show up, I'll lose this account. It's my best client. Please, Maya, can you cover for me? Just this once?" Maya sat up, her blonde hair falling over her shoulders as she processed the request. She had planned to spend the day working on her master's thesis in early childhood education, but Sophia sounded desperate. "The Ashford estate? Sophia, I don't know the first thing about—" "You don't need to. Mr. Ashford is barely there during the day. He's a widower, works constantly. You just need to do the basic cleaning. Maybe watch his son for a few hours if needed. The boy is 5. His name is Oliver. He's sweet but shy. Please, Maya, I'll owe you forever." Maya closed her eyes, thinking of all the times Sophia had helped her through college, had lent her money when times were tight, had been there when their parents passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. They only had each other now. "Okay," Maya said. "Text me the address and what I need to know. But you owe me more than forever. You owe me at least 2 forevers." Sophia's relieved laugh turned into a cough. "Deal. Thank you, Maya. You're a lifesaver." 2 hours later, Maya pulled up to a property that made her breath catch. The Ashford estate wasn't just a house. It was a sprawling mansion set back from the road, with manicured lawns, a fountain in the circular driveway, and architecture that spoke of old money and refined taste. "This is where Sophia works?" Maya muttered to herself, suddenly feeling very out of place in her practical cleaning clothes. She'd worn a light blue shirt and jeans, simple and comfortable, but now she wondered if she should have dressed differently. She rang the bell, and after a moment the door opened. A man stood there in a navy blue suit, clearly about to leave for work. He was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and striking eyes that held a weariness. Maya recognized the look of someone carrying too much weight. "You must be Sophia's replacement," he said, his voice polite but distant. "I'm Alexander Ashford. Thank you for coming on short notice." "Maya Rodriguez," she said, offering her hand. "Sophia's my sister. She's really sorry she couldn't make it. No need to apologize. These things happen." He glanced at his watch. "I'm running late for a meeting." "Oliver is in the living room. He's had breakfast, but he'll need lunch around noon. There's food in the refrigerator. The cleaning supplies are in the utility closet. Sophia's notes are on the kitchen counter. She texted me that she'd send you the routine. Oliver is your son?" Maya asked. Something flickered in Alexander's expression. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Yes, he's 5. He's been through a lot. His mother passed away 2 years ago, and he doesn't talk much anymore. To anyone, don't take it personally." Before Maya could respond, Alexander was already heading toward a sleek black car in the driveway. "I'll be back by 6. My number is on the counter if you need anything urgent." And then he was gone, leaving Maya standing in the grand foyer of a mansion, responsible for a house and a child she'd never met. She found Oliver exactly where his father had said. He'd be in an enormous living room that had been partially converted into a play area. The little boy sat on the floor, building something with colorful blocks. He had his father's dark hair and the same cautious eyes. Beside him was a stuffed gray elephant that looked well-loved, with worn patches and a slightly crooked ear. "Hi, Oliver," Maya said softly, kneeling down a respectful distance away. "My name is Maya. I'm going to be here today while your dad is at work." Oliver looked up at her briefly, then returned his attention to his blocks without saying a word. Maya had studied child development extensively, and she understood that grief in children could manifest in many ways, including selective mutism. She wouldn't push him. "That's a really cool tower you're building," she said conversationally. "I like how you're using the green blocks for the base. That's smart, makes it stronger." No response, but Oliver's hands paused for just a moment, so she knew he was listening. "I'm going to do some cleaning, but I'll be around if you need anything. Is it okay if I turn on some music? I like to listen to music while I work." This time, Oliver glanced at her and gave the tiniest nod. Maya spent the morning cleaning, but she kept returning to check on Oliver. He moved from blocks to a puzzle, from the puzzle to coloring, always with his elephant nearby. He never spoke, but he would occasionally look up when she entered the room, as if making sure she was still there. Around 11:30, Maya decided to start preparing lunch. According to Sophia's notes, Oliver liked simple food, sandwiches, fruit, cheese. Maya found everything she needed and decided to make it a bit more fun. Cutting the sandwich into fun, shapes and arranging, the fruit into a smiley face on the plate. She brought it to the living room. "Oliver, I made lunch. Would you like to eat at the table or would you prefer to eat here?" Oliver looked at the plate, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of interest in his expression. He pointed to the low coffee table. "Here it is then," Maya said, setting down the plate. She sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, not hovering but available. Oliver ate slowly, methodically. Halfway through his sandwich, he picked up his elephant and made it eat some of his fruit. "Does your elephant have a name?" Maya asked casually. Oliver looked at her for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, he whispered, "Humphrey." Maya's heart jumped, but she kept her expression calm. "Humphrey is a wonderful name. He looks like a very good friend." Oliver nodded, then went back to eating. After lunch, Oliver returned to his toys. Maya finished her cleaning tasks, but she found herself drawn back to the living room. She noticed a bookshelf filled with children's books and had an idea. "Oliver, would it be okay if I read a story? I promise I do funny voices." For the first time, Oliver made eye contact and held it. Then he walked to the bookshelf, selected a book, and brought it to her. It was a story about an elephant, fitting, given his stuffed companion. Maya sat on the floor, and Oliver surprised her by sitting next to her, close enough that their arms almost touched. She read the story, doing different voices for each character, making the elephant voice silly and trumpeting. And when she looked down at Oliver, she saw something that made her eyes sting with tears. He was smiling. Not a big smile, but it was there, real and genuine. They read 3 more books. By the 4th, Oliver was leaning against her shoulder, his elephant in his lap. When she finished, he looked up at her and said very clearly, "Again?" "Of course," Maya said, starting the story over. They were in the middle of their 2nd, reading when she heard a sound. From the doorway, Alexander Ashford stood there, still in his suit, his briefcase hanging from his hand. He was staring at them with an expression of utter shock. "Mr. Ashford?" Maya said, suddenly realizing it was already 4 o'clock. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in." "He's talking to you," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "My son is talking to you." Oliver looked at his father, then back at Maya, uncertainty crossing his small face. "We were reading stories," Maya said gently. "Oliver has excellent taste in books." Alexander set down his briefcase and walked slowly into the room, as if afraid sudden movement would break whatever spell had been cast. "Oliver, buddy?" Oliver stood up, clutching Humphrey, and walked to his father. "Daddy, Maya does funny voices." And she made my lunch smile. Alexander knelt down and pulled his son into a hug, his eyes squeezed shut. When he looked up at Maya, she could see tears on his cheeks. "Thank you," he mouthed silently over Oliver's head. Maya's own eyes filled with tears. She stood quietly, starting to gather her things, giving them their moment. "Please don't go yet," Alexander said. "Oliver, why don't you show Maya your room? Show her your train set." Oliver took Maya's hand without hesitation and led her upstairs. His room was beautiful but sparse, as if it had been decorated by an interior designer rather than a parent. Expensive. Furniture. Tasteful colors, but lacking the chaos and personality of a lived-in child's room, except for one corner, where an elaborate train set sprawled across a table. "Wow," Maya said genuinely. "Oliver, this is incredible." He showed her how the trains worked, explaining in his soft voice, which was his favorite, where each track went. Maya listened with full attention, asking questions, letting him be the expert. When they returned downstairs, Alexander had changed out of his suit into jeans and a white shirt. He looked younger, more approachable. "Maya, can we talk for a moment?" he asked. Oliver settled back onto the floor with his toys, and Maya followed Alexander into the kitchen. "I don't know what you did today," Alexander said, "but my son spoke to you." "He hasn't spoken to anyone." outside of mandatory responses to me or his therapist in over a year. Not to Sophia, not to his teachers, not to anyone. And in one day you got him to talk to you. To smile, to... His voice broke. I haven't heard him laugh in so long. I'd almost forgotten what it sounded like. I just spent time with him, Maya said. I didn't push. I let him come to me when he was ready. It's more than that, Alexander insisted. Sophia is wonderful, but Oliver never opened up to her like this. There's something about you. He paused. What do you do? For work, I mean. Are you a professional nanny? No, Maya said. I'm finishing my master's degree in early childhood education. I want to work with children who've experienced trauma, help them process their grief and find their voices again. Alexander stared at her. You're studying exactly what my son needs. Every child is different, Maya said carefully. What worked today might not work tomorrow. But it worked today, Alexander said. Maya, I know this is going to sound crazy. We just met, but would you consider coming back? Not as a cleaning person, I can hire anyone for that. But as someone who could spend time with Oliver, help him, be there for him in a way I haven't been able to manage while running my company. Mr. Ashford? Alexander, please. Alexander, I have my thesis to finish, and I'm not a licensed therapist yet. I know, and he has a therapist. But he needs more than weekly sessions. He needs someone in his daily life who understands what he's going through. Someone who can help him feel safe again. Someone who can make his lunch smile. Alexander's voice cracked on the last words. Maya looked past him to where Oliver sat playing, and she thought about her research, about her passion for helping children heal. This wasn't what she'd planned. But sometimes the most important work wasn't what you planned. Let me talk to Sophia, she said finally. And let me think about it. This is a big decision. Of course. Take all the time you need. Alexander pulled out his wallet and handed her several bills, far more than Sophia's usual day rate. This is too much, Maya protested. It's not nearly enough, Alexander said. Maya, you gave me back my son's voice today. There isn't an amount that could repay that. As Maya prepared to leave, Oliver ran up to her. Will you come back? He asked, clutching Humphrey. Maya knelt down to his eye level. Would you like me to? Oliver nodded vigorously. Then yes, Maya said, making a decision in her heart before her head had fully caught up. I'll come back. Oliver surprised her by hugging her. Something Alexander later told her he hadn't done with anyone except his father in over a year. That evening, Maya called Sophia and explained everything. Her sister was thrilled, encouraging her to take the opportunity. Maya, this is what you've been studying for. This is your purpose showing up in the most unexpected way. And honestly, Alexander Ashford is a good man. His wife died so suddenly, and he's been trying so hard to be both parents to Oliver, but he's drowning. They need someone like you. Over the next few weeks, Maya began spending her days at the Ashford estate. Alexander hired someone else to do the cleaning, making Maya's role solely about Oliver. She learned his routines, his triggers, his joys. She introduced activities designed to help him process his grief, art therapy, music, play therapy techniques she'd studied, and slowly, beautifully, Oliver began to emerge from his shell. He started talking more, first just to Maya, then gradually to his father, then to others. He laughed. He played with genuine enthusiasm. He started sleeping through the night without nightmares, and Alexander noticed. He started coming home earlier, joining their afternoon activities. He learned the songs Maya taught Oliver, the games they played. He became present in a way he hadn't been since his wife's death, pulled back into active fatherhood by the simple joy of seeing his son come alive again. Maya also noticed Alexander. She saw past the wealthy CEO to the devoted father underneath, the man who had been paralyzed by grief and fear of failing his son. She saw how hard he tried, how much he loved Oliver, how desperately he wanted to do right by the little boy. And Alexander saw Maya, truly saw her. Her intelligence, her compassion, her natural gift with his son. The way she made their house feel like a home again. The way she brought light into rooms that had been dark for too long. 3 months after Maya first walked through the Ashford estate's doors, Alexander asked her to stay for dinner. It had become routine by then, but this time felt different. Oliver was already in bed and they sat in the living room with glasses of wine. I need to tell you something, Alexander said. And I hope it won't make things awkward, but I can't not say it anymore. Maya's heart started pounding. Okay, I'm falling in love with you, Alexander said simply. I didn't mean to. I hired you to help my son, and you've done that beyond anything I could have imagined. But somewhere along the way, you also helped me. You reminded me that life continues, that there's room for joy even after loss. You made this house feel like a home again. You made me remember how to be a father. And you made me want to be more than just a father. You made me want to be a man who has room in his life for love. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Alexander, I know it's complicated, he continued. I know you came here as an employee, and I would never want you to feel pressured. If you don't feel the same way, nothing has to change. You can continue working with Oliver. He needs you. Regardless of anything between us. But I had to be honest. I had to tell you that what I feel for you goes far beyond gratitude. I love you too, Maya whispered. I've been trying not to. I kept telling myself it was unprofessional, that I was here for Oliver, that I couldn't let my feelings complicate things. But I can't help it. I love you, and I love Oliver. And somewhere along the way, this stopped feeling like a job and started feeling like a family. Alexander crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a gentleness that made her heart ache. You are family, he said against her hair. You've been family since the day you made Oliver's lunch smile. They took things slowly, mindful of Oliver and wanting to make sure he was comfortable with the change in their relationship. But Oliver, with the emotional intuition of children, seemed to understand before they told him. Are you going to be my new mommy? He asked Maya one afternoon with his characteristic directness. Maya and Alexander exchanged glances. Would that be okay with you? Maya asked carefully. Oliver thought about it seriously. My first mommy is in heaven. Daddy says she watches over me. But I think she'd want me to have someone here too. Someone who does funny voices and makes lunch smile. I think she'd like you. Alexander had to leave the room, overcome with emotion. Maya hugged Oliver tight. I would be honored to be your mommy if that's what you want. And your first mommy will always be your mommy too. We can love them both, okay? Okay, Oliver said, satisfied with this explanation. They married 8 months later in a small ceremony in the garden of the estate. Oliver was the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously, with Humphrey the elephant tucked under his arm. Sophia was Maya's maid of honor, still boasting that her illness had been the best thing that ever happened to her sister. In his vows, Alexander said, You came to my house to cover a shift for your sister. You were supposed to be here for 1 day. Instead, you stayed and gave me back my son. You gave me back my life. You taught me that healing is possible, that love can bloom even in the darkest soil. Maya, you are the answer to prayers I was afraid to pray. In her vows, Maya said, I came here thinking I was helping a family in need. I didn't realize I was the one who needed saving. You and Oliver showed me what my purpose was, where my heart belonged. You taught me that sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with romance. They start with a little boy who needs someone to sit on the floor and read him stories. Everything else grows from there. Oliver, prompted by Alexander, added his own vow. Maya, I promise to always let you do the funny voices, and I promise to eat my vegetables. Most of the time, everyone laughed through their tears. Years later, when people asked how they met, Maya would smile and say, I covered my sister's shift as a maid for 1 day. I was just supposed to clean the house. Instead, I found a little boy who needed me to sit down and play blocks with him. And in doing that, I found my family. And Alexander would add, she came into our lives by accident, stayed by choice, and became essential without either of us fully realizing it. She saved my son. But more than that, she taught us both how to live again, how to love again, how to be a family again. Oliver, who grew up to become a child psychologist himself, inspired by the woman who'd helped him find his voice, would say, she made my lunch smile. And then she made everything smile. That's the kind of magic that changes your whole life. Because sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive disguised as ordinary days. A favor for a sister, a sick day, a child who needs someone to simply sit on the floor and be present. Maya had shown up to clean a house. Instead, she'd helped heal a family. And in doing so, she'd found where she belonged all along. She'd covered for her sister for 1 day, but she'd stayed for a lifetime. And that made all the difference.